Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to call this meeting of the Peace River, Minnesota Regional Water Supply Authority to order. It's June 7th, 2017, approximately 9:30 a.m., and we're at Charlotte County Administrator Center. If y'all would at this time, please rise with me for the invocation, followed by the pledge. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning with humbled hearts, and we just thank you, dear Heavenly Father, for us being able to meet here as a board and live in the country, Lord, with the freedoms it gives us the opportunity to gather together like this and meet and discuss the business of our constituents around us, Lord. And we just ask at this time that you give these board members up here with me the wisdom and knowledge that we need to make decisions that would be best for our community. We thank you for the precious rain that you've been sending us, and we just thank you for it so very much, and we've been so dry, and we just thank you for all that you do for us. Lord, we just ask that you keep your hand on the men and women, Lord, that protect us and take care of us and make sure that the laws are enforced and that we're safe and that we can gather together and congregate like we are today without fear of being interrupted by outside means. And Lord, we just ask that you just continue to watch over them, our soldiers. Keep your hand of protection on them as they try to protect us. We ask all these things now in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Y'all would, let's turn for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I'd like to welcome our guests with us today. We have Miss Debbie McDowell from Northport. She's with us. Good morning. Mr. Ken Daltrey, he's here for Charlotte County Commissioner. If there's anybody else, I apologize if I missed you. And if this time we would, for introductions and of all our guests that we have today, if we would, we'll start over here with you, Mike, and just go around the room. Give us your name and your title, please.
Mike Coast, Water Supply Authority.
Diane Sauls, Legislative Affairs Consultant for the Authority.
Kevin Morris with the Water Supply Authority.
Ann Lee with the Water Supply Authority. Terry Bolton with HDR. Grace John, Chair of the Board of Section of the American Water Works Association.
Richard Anderson with the Water Supply Authority.
Carolyn Miller, Charlotte County.
Gary Hubbard, Charlotte County.
Mike Dixon with Chris Sherrick with Sherrick Solutions. Mike McGee, KW.
Mike Kasey with PUNTA.
Steve Adams with GORDA. Chris Rogers, Water Supply Authority. Doug Leeds, Water Supply Authority.
John Ferguson, Southwest Florida Water Management District.
Debbie McDowell, City of Northport. Michelle Cook, Northport Facility.
Ryan Cavallari with AECOM.
Mark Simpson. Gary Roberts, Charlotte Sun.
Chris Hyde with King Engineering. Peter Garholm from Chisholm Shores Advisory Committee.
Ashley Neely with Kinley Warren Associates.
David Cash, Sarasota County.
Dorian for Pesco DMK Associates.
Okay.
Emily Lewis, Charlotte County Administration.
Okay. Thank y'all. Okay. At this time, we'll open it up for public comments. Does anybody in the audience have comments they'd like to bring before the board at this time? Seeing none, moves us on to our first resolution presentation, number 1, Outstanding Water Treatment Plant Class A Award presented by the Florida Section American Water Works Association. Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Richard Anderson of the Authority for the Record. Just like to quickly introduce our guest, Dr. Grace Johns. She's with...
You have to hit the green button. You got it.
How's that? Is that better?
Much better.
Richard Anderson with the Authority for the Record. I'd like to quickly introduce Dr. Grace Johns with Hazen and Sawyer. She's the current chair of the Florida Section AWWA. She's here to present an award today for us for the Class A Outstanding Water Treatment Plant. And Grace, if you'd go to that
Is it
mic.
okay if I approach?
Yes, ma'am.
Please.
Thank you.
Got it.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair and fellow board members. It's a real pleasure to be here this morning. This is one of my favorite jobs in recognizing the hard work that water utilities and water authorities like you all do in Florida to make this economy and our lifestyle something that we can all enjoy and be proud of. I'm here today with our Region 10 Chair, Terry Holcomb. Region 10 is one of 12 sections in Florida. We have Florida divided up into smaller sections so that we can interact with each other in a more local manner, and it's been very valuable to our organization. Region 10 is includes our members in the counties of Charlotte, DeSoto, Hardee, Manatee, and Sarasota. And you may already know this, but the American Water Works Association is the world's largest educational and scientific organization. We are dedicated to serving and supporting our diverse water professionals as they make a better world and a better Florida through better water. Our mission is to be the authoritative resource on safe water to protect public health and to provide safe and sufficient and affordable water for all. That's who we are, that's what we do, that's all we do. We have 50,000 members, and those members include 4,000 water utilities that serve 80% of the United States population, and we are very proud of that. Our association is represented by 43 local sections, including our Florida section, and I represent our Florida section. We have over 2,500 members in Florida, and that includes 175 water utilities in Florida. Now, here's the best part. We are here today to recognize the Peace River, Minnesota Regional Water Supply Authority for your efforts to provide safe and reliable drinking water to West Central Florida residents and visitors 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no time off. At this time, I would like to invite two of your prized professionals up here to join me to accept the award that I'm about to give out. Doug Leith, your maintenance supervisor, and Chris Rogers, your project manager. Now I'm going to tell you a few things you already know. Each and every day, but I think it deserves repeating, each and every day the authority treats and distributes an average of 26 million gallons of drinking water per day every day to residents and businesses for its members in Charlotte, DeSoto, and Sarasota counties. At this moment, I want to give a quick shout out to Charlotte County Utilities for having the best of the best drinking water in Region 10, which includes all those counties I just listed. So that's quite a good accomplishment there, and it reflects the authority's great work. The authority's water treatment facility is located on the Peace River in DeSoto County. It has a capacity of 51 million gallons per day. So your organization is well positioned to continue to provide high-quality drinking water for decades to come, and that's a great position to be in. Not all of us can say that. Today we recognize the accomplishments of the authority by presenting you with our 2016 Outstanding Water Treatment Plant Award. Each year the Florida section presents this award to one deserving utility in each of 3 size classes. And the authority was selected from the state's largest size class. The award recognizes the authority's employees as outstanding performers and leaders in maintaining high water quality and reliable operations, and taking responsible care of the components of the water treatment plant, which, as we all know, is extremely important, in keeping excellent records, in promoting professionalism, safety, and emergency preparedness, and in implementing a responsive public relations program. So these are very high bars that we need to meet. This award is an extremely notable achievement because, as you all know, without safe and reliable water, we as a community and a nation cannot survive and prosper. Water, safe, reliable drinking water is the #1 input that we need in order for our communities to thrive and for us to be healthy. I do want to thank you, the Board of Directors. Your leadership is extremely important to everything that happens in this organization. And this award reflects you and what you all do each and every day, your hard work and your perseverance and your headaches, perhaps even. But it's all well worth it to all of the residents and visitors here. I want to just give you a real quick introduction to our monthly magazine, the Florida Water Resources Journal. And just note that on page 19 there is a beautiful picture of Richard Anderson and Mike Schell accepting the award at the Florida Water Resources Conference 2 months ago. And also Terry Holcomb, if you wondered what she's all about. There is a reader profile of her that's excellent that describes Terry and what she's been doing and the things that she enjoys, which is on page, I'm sorry, it's in here, just flip through it and you'll see it. Terry, do you remember what page it's on?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, it's really good. Okay. Anyway, this is a great, I'm very proud of this magazine, this journal. It looks like a magazine, but it's very informative and professional and tells all about what we do to provide water and wastewater services to Florida. So at this time, let's get the award. Where's the award? Terry's going to hold it. Okay, so at this time, it is with great pleasure that Terry and I present the American Water Works Association Florida Section Outstanding Water Treatment Plant Award to the Peace River, Minnesota Regional Water Supply Authority for your outstanding performance in 2016. Yes. Wait, sorry.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And there's a very nice picture of Ms. Johns on page 20 scoring the water, so that's really good. We appreciate that. You know, I just want to say I appreciate the award. You know, I know that this authority, this board works very hard, this authority works very hard. Everybody at the facility, they have crisp collars and crisp cuffs, and they work really hard because it is an operation where everybody is extremely responsible about their jobs and what they do, and they're extremely professional. And I will tell you, having grown up in New York, my idea when I came down to visit Florida, having relatives on both coasts, Florida meant you had drinking water that tasted like sulfur. That was Florida to me. Our water does not taste like sulfur. We have the best tasting water. I have no problems in Port Charlotte when I'm at my office or the hospital going over to the drinking fountain and drinking out of the drinking fountain. It's cold, it's crisp, it's delicious. We have great water in Charlotte County, and I think it's great that we're recognized, and the world needs to know that. So my hat is off to everybody that's worked so hard to make sure that we have that, and we have it on a consistent basis, as you said, 24/7. Very, very important. So thank you very much.
Good. All right. I forgot a while ago when we got started here, this sharp-dressed young man sitting next to me, he's filling in for Commissioner Mayo today, and this is Mr. Jonathan Lewis. He's our Assistant County Administrator for Sarasota County, and thank you for filling in for your boss. Mr. Mayo says he had another meeting, but I think he's fishing.
And Mr. Chairman, remember, Mr. Lewis is not a rookie because he used to work for the City of Northport, and he sat in the audience every meeting as a customer, so he's well aware what happens at this.
Good deal. Glad we had somebody competent to come show up for a meeting. At this time, it brings us to a consent agenda. I hear a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to pull items 6 and 7 for discussion,
Okay.
and then I move to approve the balance.
Okay.
Second.
All right. I have a motion by Commissioner Constant, seconded by Commissioner Benak to approve the consent agenda with exception for items 6 and 7 to be pulled for discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Commissioner Constance, agenda item number 6, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 6 deals with selection of a firm for professional auditing services. Again, this gets back to what I thought we had agreed upon when it came to contracting for services, that each member of the authority was given an opportunity to offer up a member to sit on that evaluation committee, and then a fifth member would be selected by the authority staff, so that we had an opportunity for all the member governments to be able to do that. And so we have in front of us, I guess this is the procurement policy as of January 2016, but if, let me just read this here. The authorities shall be responsible for selecting an independent certified public accountant to audit authority. Selection committee consisting of executive director, budget accounting analyst, and one other person designated by the executive director. And I appreciate that, but that's not necessarily, this isn't required by Florida statute. This is just what we have currently as our procurement rules. Is that right, Mr. Lehman?
It references the statutes because there are specific statutes, but the makeup of the committee was set by board policy, yes.
Right. So I'm, at this point, I'm okay with moving forward on this item, but I want us to bring this back because I think that the idea at the time we talked about this 8 or 9 months ago was that anything that went out for contracting, we needed to have it set up so that each of the 4 member governments have the opportunity to send a representative, and if they opt out, that's fine. You can fill that seat, but this is our ratepayers. These are our decisions to make, and so I think we have certainly skin in the game. We need to have somebody sitting at the table if we so choose to do that. If one or more or all of the counties decide it's okay, they're going to leave it to you, that's fine, but we need to be given that opportunity. So I'm just putting that out there.
Any other comments from any other commissioner or board members? Excuse me.
I'll go ahead and just comment. Obviously, I was not on the board 8 months ago when this was discussed, so that would be a deviation from the standard procedure, I guess, that this board has followed for selection, or is that what
well,
you're
it may be for this particular item, but prior to this, whenever we were getting any sort of contracts for construction, engineering, design, any of that, it was a group that was selected by the executive director from the authority workforce staff to determine the contracts. And since we're involved in the selection process at this level, we thought it was appropriate to get staff level from our staff from our counties to come in and get involved in the selection process as well, which we went ahead and did. I was unaware that we had a specific policy just for contracting designated professional services, which I'm not even, this is just one part. This is for independent certified accountants, but evidently the policy has carved out specific things, and while I have no problems with Ann Lee being involved in this process, I still think that the counties need to be involved as well, and that goes for all other things. Give each member government the opportunity to opt out. If they don't want to be involved in the selection process for that specific contract, that's great. They can say, Mr. Lehman, can you fill our seat or can you rearrange accordingly? But for those instances where we do want to get involved, we absolutely should be asked, do you want to stay in on this process?
Okay, and the reason I ask, because if there's an assumption that my county, Manatee County, should have a representative on a selection committee, I need to know that so I know how to appoint someone to make sure that there's somebody that is sitting on that. That's news to me, but if I can see the policy that says that, so I can make sure that we have an opportunity to comply with the policy.
And I think that's done at the staff level. I think Mr. Lehman, if we have an engineering contract come up, he will notify your staff that we have a contract coming forward, we're going to need a selection committee, and so from staff, who would be selected? It's going to be one of the people from your utility or that's an appropriate member of your county staff.
It's just, again, maybe I just need to see the policy because I wasn't aware of it. Thank you.
If I can comment, when we did the policy last year, exactly what Commissioner Council was saying, we focused on the engineering contracts, and those are the big projects, and then there's another clause in our procurement policy that says other professional services, but then because the auditing is also obligated under state statute, it was another carve out. So we, it's up to the board. We can go back and readdress those
Right, and
other
I'm just saying, if
services.
we, for instance, our finance guy is Mr. Berger, if he wanted to be involved in the process or designate somebody, that's great. If he looks at it and says, no, you know, the authority can handle that, that's great. But again, it's an opportunity for the member governments to opt out, not have to try to force their way in. That's not appropriate. And so the work's been done here. I'm not interested in gumming this up. I'm going to go ahead and move the item, but I just want to make sure that we address this in the future, that that's really what we meant to do at the time when we were talking about all procurement. So, move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Got a motion to approve?
Second.
Got a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Okay, consent agenda number, item 6 passes. Now we're on to agenda item number 7. Mr. Constance.
Thank you, sir. Number 7, approve work order TKW Engineering for final design for covers for all filters. And I just wanted to bring this forward to have the discussion. Mr. Lehman and I have discussed this at pre-agenda and actually prior to that. There's been an issue with the filter, with our filter. We just redid all of these filters, and the problem is that because they're open to the atmosphere, they're prone to contamination. So we just talked about the fact that this is $180,000 just to design the covers. Your anticipation for cost is about $1 million.
Yeah, that's our preliminary.
Ballpark, hopefully a lot less, but whatever. And so the point of the matter is I just wanted to make sure I understood, and talking to the public, we're going to spend $1 million. Over what period of time will we save that $1 million? Because that means that it's less chemicals. So I think there's a presentation that's been prepared that we can kind of just look through that real quick. Mr. Anderson, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if it, Kevin Morris with the authority staff.
Sorry.
And that's okay, we look alike.
You're always presenting is what it is.
We received your questions about this project, and it's a very worthy project, and we're happy to provide some additional background. I prepared a presentation that's about 15 slides. If it's the pleasure of the board, I'd be happy to present it. It'll go fairly quickly, but I think what it will do is provide you some background on the project and talk about some of the specific benefits the project will bring to us. Okay. The graphic you see in front of you is a process flow diagram for our facilities. And engineers and operators use this to just describe the way water flows. And as you devise a process flow diagram, one of the big challenges is to prevent lines from crossing, because that gets confusing. And so in this particular graphic, you see the Peace River right here in the upper right. Our river diversion pumps pump the water up into Reservoir 2. From there, it falls down into Reservoir 1 by gravity. We then pump it with the reservoir pump stations through the treatment plant. This is the Peace River Facility treatment facilities. From there, after the water is treated, it flows through a series of 6 ground storage tanks. Each of those tanks is 2 million gallons of storage. And then from there, we have 13 high-service pumps that then pump the water out to our customers. This loop that you see around the outside represents aquifer storage and recovery. We inject finished water below ground. When we pull that water back out, it goes to Reservoir 2. So it kind of makes a loop there. So we're going to focus on the water treatment facilities, and specifically, as you noted, Commissioner, the filters are not covered, and some of our chlorine contact areas, very small areas, are also not covered as well. And so, since they're open top tanks, there is the potential for airborne debris to enter the process water after the chlorine contact has been accomplished. So even though the chlorine contact chamber provides excellent high-quality disinfection, we cannot take credit for that process, credit for that disinfection, because of the risk for subsequent debris to enter the process stream downstream. So we utilize, and always have utilized, our ground storage tanks, the water moving through those 6 storage tanks, to achieve our disinfection credit. So where are the filters at the facility? We have filters associated with each treatment train, and this graphic illustrates where they are found. There's some variation in the age and in the size, the design loading rates, how we backwash the filters, but they all basically follow the same general filtration principles. The filters are all uniformly constructed with about 16 inches of graduated gravel at the bottom of the filter bed, 12 inches of sand in the middle, and at the very top is 18 to 24 inches of crushed coal or anthracite, as it's known. So how small of a particle will these filters remove? These filters will remove a particle down to 1/5,000th of an inch in size, in diameter. It's very small. You're in the 5-micron range. And to give you a perspective, it's like taking a fine human hair and cutting it in half, and then cutting it lengthwise 10 more times. Very, very small particles. The technology works excellent. Another way of looking at it is that the period on a piece of newspaper or on your agenda, the period, the typewritten period at the end of the sentence, if you took these particles and you laid them end to end, 400 of them would span the size of a period. So very, very small particles. So it's important for you to understand that covering filters is not a requirement by regulations. We currently meet all drinking water regulations and standards without covering those filters. So what are the benefits in covering them? That's the question that may come to mind. And I'm going to talk to you about 3 benefits. And the first benefit, and the one that we take very seriously, is to enhance public protection. There's always a risk when you try to design from behind the podium that you can get a little too into the details and lose people. And I'll try to keep this at a very high level. The regulations for disinfection. Disinfection is a very complex process. It depends upon which disinfectant you're using, what the chemical is. It depends upon the temperature. It depends upon the pH. So it's a very complex process. The bottom line in showing you these graphs right here, 2 of the standards that all water plants have to meet is 99.99% virus inactivation or removal. That's called a 4-log removal of virus, and then a 99.9% removal of Giardia. And it's removal or inactivation, and inactivation is just a nice word for killing the pathogens that are in the water. And what I wanted to point out with this slide and the red text that you see on there is that free chlorine is 33 times more potent at this pH and temperature at virus destruction than chloramines, and 9 times more potent for Giardia inactivation than chloramines. And so the credit that we're already achieving in our free chlorine contact zone that we can't take credit for because we haven't covered our filters would allow us to achieve a much greater measure of public protection. And I have a nice graphic here that demonstrates that in sort of a tangible way. If we looked just at the credit that we would accrue at the pH and temperature on the previous slide as compared to what the standard is, this doesn't include any of the credit for removal of those pathogens through the coagulation and the sedimentation and filtration process, it would be equivalent for viruses to adding 8 additional ground storage tanks. And for Giardia, it would be equivalent to adding 2 additional ground storage tanks. So the money that we invest in covering these filters buys us a lot of bang for our buck. And exactly how much of investment would that be? A 2 million gallon storage tank is roughly about a $2 million investment when you look at the pipes and you look at all of the engineering costs all in. So somewhere between investing the money to cover these filters buys us the benefit from a public protection standpoint of somewhere between $4 and $16 million worth of investment that otherwise we would have to invest to achieve that amount of credit. So it's a very efficient investment. I want to talk about improved safety. We all understand that Florida is the lightning capital of the nation. In the last 10 years, over 300 people have been killed by lightning strikes. And when our operators and maintenance people are on top of those filters, they are often the tallest item around, tallest object around, and you're surrounded by a lot of metal. And although we have a great grounding system and we have lightning rods protection up there, lightning's very unpredictable. And so these operators have to make their rounds every 2 hours. Every 2 hours they're up there collecting samples, they're up there backwashing filters, and giving them a cover, giving them a roof system that protects them from a lightning strike, I think would be a great improvement to employee safety. And then I want to talk briefly about improving treatment control. We've all driven behind somebody who's texting, they slow down, they speed up, they slow down, they speed up. It's very frustrating. We currently achieve our disinfection credit by maintaining the storage tanks at a certain level, at 20 feet. And so the customer demands change throughout the day. Everyone gets up at the same time, goes to work, they come home at the same time. So we see an ebb and a flow in the demands throughout the day. And so our facility has to constantly ramp up and down in treatment capacity, or the flow through the plant, to be able to keep up. And of course, with any kind of a water treatment process, anytime that you change the flows, you disrupt the chemical regimes, you disrupt the hydraulics. And so if we can cover the filters, that would give us the ability to flex those tanks operationally over a wider range. We could set and pick a flow rate that is good for the entire day and not worry about the level in the storage tanks. And so that would give us better water quality and a more easy to control process. Also, covering the filters minimizes the impact of solar incidents on the insolation on the filters. UV light will destroy disinfectant residual, and so in the daytime that's a problem. It's not at night. If we cover the filters, that no longer becomes an issue for us. Also, algae can grow on the wetted sides of the concrete filter cells, and covering the filters would eliminate that. And then also, rainfall can affect chemical equilibria. It can disrupt the particle conditioning, and the step after that is filtration, and we really want to control the particle conditioning in that process. So here's a good question. So all these benefits, why aren't they covered? And I think this gets to your question, Mr. Commissioner, if I can be so presumptuous. Why aren't they already covered? Two reasons. One is cost. It's about $1 million to cover these filters. We believe it's about $1 million. Part of this next work order will be at 2 different levels to gather cost estimates on implementing the project. And this project is one of those projects that kind of falls in that gray area. It's not a large multi-million-dollar pipeline or reservoir or water treatment plant, and it's not a small routine repair. It's kind of in that gray area in between. And as part of our strategic plan, we are developing a CIP program, and we've been talking in budget development. Mr. Lehman has been tasked us with trying to bring projects like this before you, so that there is a lot more advanced notice of projects of this size, that they're in that kind of that gray area in between. The second is the evolving regulatory environment. The EPA, when they're promulgating new regulations, they try to telegraph exactly what their intent is, but there is a regulation negotiation process that occurs. And so oftentimes the regulation that they originally proposed years down the road is not the one that's actually adopted and passed and enforced. And 25 years ago, there were upcoming changes that we in the industry, in the water industry, were anticipating that might have forced us to use something like ozone or ultraviolet disinfection to achieve disinfection credits for surface water. If we had been pushed in that direction, covering the filters really would have been a wasted investment at that point, because UV and ozone are so much more powerful oxidants and disinfectants than free chlorine is. And then, so that was in the late 1990s. And then also in the late 1990s, there was a look at the disinfection byproducts rules. There was a push in the industry to reduce those by a factor of 2, which also could have changed the treatment process significantly that we use at the Peace River facility. As it turned out, once again, those rules that were anticipated did not happen. And so we're still using the same treatment process today that we were using 25 years ago. It's a great process, produces fantastic water. The other thing that we know is that in Washington right now, this administration is not likely to promulgate new and additional, more stringent regulations. This is not the climate that would generate widespread changes in disinfection rules or disinfection byproducts. And so we feel like this project, with all of its benefits, would be a wise and safe and prudent investment at this point. It's not likely to be made invalid by changes coming up soon. I have a couple slides here for you that show you how this facility may look. TKW engineers, I think, really knocked this out of the park. What you have on the left side of the page here are the filters as they currently exist, and then sort of a conceptual artist rendering of how they might be covered. And what you have here is an impervious roof with removable panels so that we can still drop a crane hook down in there or lower media in or pull components out. It's very important to retain that functionality. And around the outer edge, you have removable screen panels. And those panels, in talking with the folks at Lake Manatee, their filters are covered. In talking to the folks at Lake Manatee, they had some really valuable guidance for us to make these panels standardized so you can swap them in and out, make them removable from the inside so you don't have to drive up with a cherry picker or a ladder to the outside of the filter structure. So that's some great guidance. So what we envision are removable panels so that we can keep some spares. If one is torn by a bird crashing into it or something, we can quickly replace it. So what you have on the left is before, and on the right would be after, and this would be the REP facilities that they're about coming up on 10 years old now. This is how we envision covering them as well. Now, kind of a last detail to talk about. I'm kind of glad we didn't cover our filters with the Peace River option because Hurricane Charlie would have blown them down. One of the things we have to be concerned with public infrastructure, especially critical infrastructure that is intended to stay functional through a storm event, the community is relying upon us to stay functional. We have to design the structural roof and the vertical supports for these screen panels to withstand hurricane force winds. We've designated 180-mile-an-hour wind loads because we're 2 stories off the ground with this facility, and we cannot afford, when the community is trying to recover, to be out there fishing structural metal out of our treatment basins, right? So that's one of the challenges for us. The cost estimate that the engineers have put together, they believe it's about $1 million, but this is a fairly unique project with very rigorous design criteria. And so the cost estimates, we'll bring that information back to you when we get it. We believe it's about $1 million, but most people's pool cage at home is not designed for 180-mile-an-hour wind loads. And we've all seen the creeping increase in construction costs over the last several years. So today's ask, as you noted, Mr. Commissioner, was just for the design and permitting. We're going to bid this project hopefully by this fall. The estimated construction cost is about $1 million right now. It will be funded through R&R. And then you have the motion in front of you here.
Mr. Constance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great presentation, Mr. Morris. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, it lacks a video, but that's okay. So I want to go through from the beginning just some of the things you brought forward. I was actually surprised. Are we still pumping finished water into the ASR? I thought we were trying to pump less critical or less treated water into that, so at a better cost.
Right. We've just begun a pilot program with just 2 of the wells out of well field number 2. So out of 21 wells, 19 are only recharged with finished water. And the pilot program, we finished 1 cycle. The intent was to finish 3 cycles, I think, Mike, 3 cycles. Unfortunately, the drought we just had got in the way of us. So the second cycle, hopefully, will start here very shortly, and then we'll crank out a 3rd cycle, and hopefully we will understand the feasibility of that going forward. We're excited about that project, though.
So the intent is you're studying, you're putting the lesser treated water in, and you're going to draw it back out and see what it looks like, and then based upon those results say, hey, this is possible that we can do this without using finished, get approval to do that, and then make that our new process.
That's our intent, yes.
Okay. Good to hear. All right. I appreciate the fact that you explained the tank situation. Obviously, $2 million a tank is pretty expensive, and just putting the covers on is a great idea. Appreciate you bringing out the lack of sun exposure, where we should even see an efficiency in the cost of the chemicals, because, you know, I don't know to what extent that's going to be annually, but it's going to be something. And obviously, rain changes your chemical makeup too, so now you're going to have tremendous consistency over what flows through those filters. I was really glad to hear that. Obviously, if you put the covers on, you're going to move the lightning rods above that structure, so then everybody's a lot safer. You talked about regulations. Well, if new regulations come in, certainly whatever system you have in place is going to get grandfathered. They're not going to make you change everything. There's no way that communities can afford to continually change what they do if it's met standards to that point just because new regulations come in.
Well, a good example of that, what was driving a lot of the concern in the industry in the late 1990s, Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee had a treatment plant upset, and it was an alum coagulation plant pulling out of one of the Great Lakes. I'm not sure which one it was, but they had an upset, and they had several hundred people take ill with gastrointestinal distress, and it was from cryptosporidium. And so with such a large and visible public emergency going on, it took hold, and it shaped the regulations that we all anticipated. And so the interim enhanced surface water treatment rule required all utilities to sample for cryptosporidium. We later found that there's at least a dozen different species of cryptosporidium, and cryptosporidium is a small protozoan that's often found in the environment. But we found that there's over a dozen species of crypto, and not every one of them even is can infect humans. And so we found out a lot more about it. One of the good things that came out of it, out of all the sampling we did sampling for 2 years, every month on the Peace River, and never one time did they get a hit of cryptosporidium. So the regulations have the best intent, but they're broad for the entire country. It may be a regional problem, certainly is a problem up there in Milwaukee, not as big of a concern for us. But the regulations, federal regulations, apply to every state, regardless of whether they make sense in your area or not.
And I appreciate that. Again, you know, I do appreciate the fact that you gave us some more detail, and I think my only issue is that, you know, something like this probably shouldn't be on consent agenda because it looks like a small ticket item, but actually it winds up being a big ticket item. So this is the kind of conversation and presentation we need to be having right now, not after we spend all the engineering dollars and then come back and say, okay, now it's going to cost this much to do all of this. What if the board really didn't have an appetite to do it in the first place? So I would just like to see these things right at the inception of the concept, because I think, I mean, I'm on board. You know, I'm going to move the item, but you know, I just think it's important for us to, for transparency purposes, to get it out there and have that discussion ahead of time. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval.
Okay, have a motion to approve agenda item number, or consent agenda number 7.
Second.
I hear a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously to for consent agenda item number 7. Now it moves us on to regular business. Agenda item number 1.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair, board members, Richard Anderson of your staff. Item 1, as usual, is the water supply conditions report. We're going to take a look at the production results for the month of April, and then the water supply conditions through about 2 weeks ago. First slide, as usual, is the rainfall. As we talked back in April, extremely dry spell we're in here. In fact, when we got the final numbers for April after the board meeting, barely a half an inch of rain in the basin for the month of April. And then actually continuing into May, we had very little rain through the first 3 weeks, first 3 weeks of the month. Then the last week, it started to happen. So it may not be Chamber of Commerce weather, but we like it and we need it. So had about a 2 inches at the end of May, and looking at the rain gauges this morning, we've had about another 2.5 inches the first week of June. So all told, almost 5 inches in the last 3 weeks, which is really helping. The next slide, I've shown this in the past. The left side is the rainfall distribution from the Swift Mud rain gauges throughout the district. This is through June of 16, and blue represents a very wet condition. As you can see, the previous 12 months ending in June of 16, extremely wet. Conditions changed rapidly the last 10 months. The slide on the right shows through April 17, and you can see all the red compared to the previous 12 months. In fact, Swift Mud at their board meeting stated that this was the driest spring in 103 years that we've seen in this area. So we've had some extremely dry conditions. Taking a look at the river flow, again, as you can see through 2 weeks ago, well below the 130 CFS mark where we can actually take water. We were down in the 30 to 40 CFS range, extremely low river flows. As of this morning, we're actually approaching the blue line, which is the historical average. We're about 248 CFS. So we're above the red line and continuing to climb over the next few days as long as these rains will continue. So looking better. River withdrawals, as you can see, we took no water at all from the river in April and May, very little in March, and only about 10 MGD back to February. So we've been solely relying on our supplies over the last 4 to 5 months. Still have not had any water to take in June as well. Water quality is just not there yet, even though the quantity is. So we're waiting for the big flush to happen so that we can see the water quality improve and start pumping water here, hopefully in the next week to 10 days. Taking a look at our surface water storage, as you can see, in May we dipped below the 3,000 or 3 billion gallon mark there at about 2.9 billion. Today we're about 2.7 billion, just a little bit lower. And then looking at ASR storage, as of May 23rd, we were at about 5.7 billion. Today we're about 5.4 billion, about right there on the graph. This is a new slide I put in to kind of illustrate how we've responded to the drought this spring. The blue line is the withdrawals from the surface water system, from the reservoir. As you can see, back in January, taking 100% of the supply from the reservoir, averaging about 30 million gallons a day. Then February, seeing the conditions starting to change, or not improving at least, cranking up the ASR at about a 5 MGD rate. And then again, April 1st, really taking advantage of the ASR system and bringing it up to about 19 MGD average. So we were at the last few months about 58% reliant on the ASR system, about 42% reliant on our surface water storage.
If I can, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
What's the quality on the ASR? I mean, as far as salinity and purity and those types of things, we're pretty happy with what's coming out prior to treatment? Because I know it's going into the surface first, and then you're pulling out a surface, but you are testing that, right?
We are testing it every week, and all things considered, we're very happy with the water quality. As you've heard before, the background water quality of the native water is not up to water quality standards, so as we take more and more water out, it does degrade somewhat, but we're still able to meet water quality standards with the ASR water, so we're in very good shape.
That's great, thank you.
So.
Yes, ma'am.
So is that the primary reason for taking it from the ASRs, because of the improved quality, or just because of the reduced quantity, or is it kind of both?
It's mainly the reduced quantity. As we were using the surface water system the first part of the dry season, we were dropping about 1 foot per week on average. As we cranked up the ASR, we reduced that to about a half a foot. So we're basically managing the resource is what we were attempting to do.
But the ASR, well, as you explained, it is actually kind of double treated, if you will. It gets treated, then goes back through, and then kind of gets treated once again. So it does have an improved water quality and vis-a-vis the surface water. So.
What goes in is higher water quality. The more you take out, what comes out is slowly degrades a little bit. So, but what goes in, yes, is finished drinking water standards. Yes.
Richard,
Yes,
is
sir.
that water blended, the ASR and the water coming out of the reservoir? Is that water blended before it gets to the treatment plant, or is it separated?
No, yes, sir. It's all the water taken out of the ASR system is sent back to Reservoir 2, so it's diluted with all the natural surface water from the river. So
Okay.
it's a blended product, yes. And this is just a snapshot of where we are today, or actually through May 23rd. 2.9 billion in the surface water, and about 5.7 in the ASR. So still have over 8 billion gallons available in storage. And now I'll shift real quick to the production side for April. As I said, April was a very dry month. Very high flows across the region. The authority produced 29 MGD to the customers and members. Your county facilities produced about 53.5 MGD. Total production for the region was 82.5 MGD, which is quite high. 4 of that was supplied to non-authority customers through Manatee County, through their coastal consecutive systems. So the total to our members and our customers within the authority, 78.6.
Mr. Chairman, and again, this is, that reflects only the 4 counties and customers. That's not other city water supplies that we don't control.
Correct. The authority system represents what we pump from the plant, and the county facilities, the second line, represents what you as a group produced on your own, from your own facilities. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Looking at the individual members, Charlotte County took 12 3/4 more or less from the authority in April, produced 500,000 gallons from their burnt store facility for a total of 13.25 MGD total usage for April. And that brings your 12-month running average up to over 11.5 million gallons per day. For DeSoto County, again, about 1.1 million from the authority, and about 0.3 from your facilities in the county, totaling almost 1.5 MGD for the month of April for you guys. That is bringing your running average up, creeping up there to 1.1, Commissioner, so you're starting to use some more water out in your system as well. Manatee County. Manatee self-supplied to their customers 38.8 MGD, exported 4.7 to Sarasota County, and again, almost 4 MGD to your consecutive coastal communities, for a total production of about 47.5 million gallons. Your 12-month rolling average is approaching 33 MGD, 32.9 for the last 12 months. And Sarasota County took 14 MGD from the authority for April, imported again 4.6 from Manatee, and supplied about 100,000 gallons to Northport in April, so that's the discrepancy on that number. And through your self-supplied facilities and well fields, almost 3 MGD for the month. Total production, 21.5 million. And finally, City of Northport took 1.2 from the authority, produced 2.2 from your facilities, took an additional 90,000 a day from Sarasota County for a total of about 3.5 MGD. And the 12-month running average for Northport was just over 3 MGD. And looking at the big picture, all those numbers rolled up into one. As you can see, the 12-month rolling average, 71.5 MGD. I do expect that to start dropping as we get into the rainy season and these numbers start going back down over the next couple, 3-4 months. But as you can see, we still are on the incline as far as regional usage. And a quick look finally at the regional utilization here. Again, for April we used 82 and 82.4 MGD. That left 22.3 available, which is still only 78.7% of our available resources. So even in a peak month, we still have adequate supplies to meet customer demands. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Board members, you have any questions? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you very much.
Brings us to agenda item number 2. Mr. Kevin?
I won the lottery today. I get to talk a lot, I guess. Or you lost. I'm not sure which. The Phase 3B Regional Interconnect Project, there's really not much to talk about here. You may remember from our previous board meeting we talked about the Phase 3B pipeline. We now have a route selected. That's the yellow line that you see here, moving up from the landfill area, the Sarasota County Central Solid Waste Complex in Center County, up to Clark Road. And we talked about the justification for moving, dividing the 3B pump station away from the pipeline It's still called the 3B pump station, which seems odd since it's 7 miles from the pipeline, but we talked about the value in moving that pump station to the north, where it eventually would tie in with Phase 3C and creating part of the contiguous regional loop system. And what you have in your board book today, we're simply asking the board to receive and file the final basis of design reports for both the pipeline and the pump station. At the February board meeting, we asked you to accept the draft basis of design report for the pipeline, and our intent was to just add an appendix to that, or a chapter to it, that included the pump station. But it was easier and cleaner for us to just create a separate standalone document for the pump station. So the only changes really between draft and final for the pipeline were, I think, a couple of page numbers were changed, and the figure numbers were on the figure titles were reversed on a few. So very minor changes there. The pump station basis of design report, it is at a stage where it is a complete and standalone product. Some of the changes that have happened in the region in the last couple of months, Sarasota and Manatee counties have collaborated together and had Corollo develop a 2-county hydraulic model. And that 2-county hydraulic model gives us a lot more intelligence about the migration of water across the county boundary that's right around University Boulevard. And so that model will be very useful not only for the counties, but we anticipate will provide a lot of value to the authority as we look at our regional loop elements. There may be ways to optimize the size of those or the location of those. So the 3B pump station is still discussed in the basis design report, is discussed as being near the intersection of Fruitville and Lorraine Roads. But if that location changes, the basis design report would certainly have to be amended to reflect that. So that's about all I have to say about this. We're just asking for the action.
Board members, any questions?
I just have a question for Sarasota County. So when he talks about the location of the pump station, has Sarasota County approved that location tentatively, or?
My recollection is that's been in the works for years, and so yeah, throughout that process.
If I may, in talking with Mr. Cash from Sarasota County just this morning, we all understand that until a piece of land is acquired, the precise location of that pump station is but the general area, and he's having some very productive discussions with development interests further out on Fruitville Road, maybe a little further to the east than the location that our basis design report. So it's very fluid, but it's generally in that part of the region. I think we all agree that there is some value in having a storage and repumping facility there. And that, one of the points I brought out previously is, if you look at the general location of that dot in the very center there, it is almost equidistant between the Lake Manatee water plant to the north and the Carlton plant to the south. And so it seems to be a certain symmetry. It seems to make sense. You certainly don't want to put all your critical facilities in one location, so distributing them makes a certain sense.
Yeah, I only asked the question because you talked about maybe needing to modify this if the pump station moves. So I thought, well, how firm is it that it's going to be there? But I guess it is still a little bit fluid. And I also know y'all are doing the construction of the road through there, so I figured it had to be somewhat determined. But thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So this motion would cover not knowing the defined location? We're okay with that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, and you have a copy, and I know you have a lot to review, but in your board books there is an electronic copy of both basis design reports, and there is page I, or the very first page of the executive summary in blue text, there is a paragraph that discusses the fluid and dynamic nature of what's going on with respect to what we just talked about.
And that's fine, and I remember the presentation at the prior meeting where we went over different possible sightings and the theories behind why we were looking at different locations. I'm fine with that. So, Mr. Chairman, I move to receive and file the final Regional Integrated Loop System Phase 3B Pipeline Basis of Design Report and the Pump Station Basis of Design Report.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Constant. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Lewis. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Agenda item number 3, Ms. Diane.
There you go.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. For the record, my name is Diane Sauls, the authority's legislative affairs consultant, before you today to provide the authority's legislative wrap-up. Our goals were modest this year. As I pointed out to you in December, legislative members, delegations, district boundaries, leaderships, rules, procedures, all changed. But yet, the authority achieved some very important goals that I'd like to share with you. These goals go towards laying a groundwork for a multi-year process. And first and foremost, I believe we were quite successful in building relationships with new delegation members, freshmen. We became familiar with the new rules, the leadership dynamics. We raised the profile of the authority and engaged authority membership in advocacy. And it's been fun working with many of you, and thank you for your effort. And what we're doing now, more importantly, is developing a plan for regional advocacy moving forward, including chambers of commerce, the agricultural community, industry. Forming a coalition. We've been very successful in the past in this form of strategy, and I feel very confident that we can move forward in that same direction again. Bless you. We've been arranging with Southwest Florida Water Management District some summer tours, education for new legislators. We're talking with potential sponsors for the authority's 2018 funding request. And we are hitting the ground running for an early 2018 legislative session. The 2018 legislative session begins in January this year, and interim legislative committee meetings are likely to begin as early as September, so not much of a break at all. As soon as special session 2017A adjourns, hopefully later this week, it's time to hit the ground running. I'm very happy to answer any questions you might have, and again, thank you very, very much for the opportunity to serve the board.
Thank you, Ms. Diane. Board members, any questions of Ms. Diane?
No questions. Just I want to acknowledge the hard work that Ms. Sauls has done and the fact that it was a very, 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 difficult legislative session this year, and so the modest gains were appreciated, and I think just staying in the game is very important because it's not a one-year thing. It's a multi-year assault on trying to get things done, and we've done very well historically, and we'll do better in the future. So appreciate your hard efforts.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Diane. Yep. Brings us to agenda item number 4 on regular business, and Kevin, you're up again.
About that. You know, occasionally a unique event like the wildfires we had that happened on just before our barbecue brings us an opportunity to share a lot of the pictures and the video. It's fascinating. It happens all around us. This time it happened right out our back door. And so, Commissioner Constance, there is some video in here for you. So I knew that would make you happy.
I brought the popcorn, Kevin.
But first, let's talk about sort of a continuation of what Mr. Anderson was talking about. It's been a very active wildfire season. There have been over 2,300 fire events just since January 1st. This map shows you that they've been all over the state. Combining all the fire incidents on this map alone, over 210,000 acres in Florida have burned in the last, well, since January 1st. So that's more than 330 square miles have burned. So it's been a very, very active fire season. Now, why have we been subject to so many wildfires? It's because we're very dry. And as Mr. Anderson talked about, the driest spring in 103 years. The Keach-Byram Drought Index, which is what this map reflects, is a measure. It's a measure used by firefighters, by climate scientists, by ranchers to look at the amount of moisture in the top levels of the soil, the subsurface soil moisture content. And the fascinating thing about this is that 3 weeks ago, in mid-May, when May 13th, the day the fire, the rain tree fire ignited, we were actually drier than any place in the country. We were drier even than West Texas. We were drier than the Sonoran Desert in South Arizona. So it gives you a sense for just how dry conditions were. And one of the reasons that we were so dry and it makes us so subject to fires is all of our lush vegetation. We have so much grass, we have so many shrubs, so many trees. When a little bit of rain falls, that ecological system grabs that moisture and evapotranspirates it out. Whereas in the deserts, the vegetation is a lot more sparse and is a lot more adapted to holding on to that moisture. And so one of the things that makes Florida beautiful also makes it, which is all of our vegetation, also exacerbates the wildfire potential for us, because we have all of this fuel that has grown and is now very dry, and when rain falls, it is evaporated out by the plant systems. So this is an outline of what is designated as the rain tree fire, because it occurred around Rain Tree Boulevard in Northport. And you can see I-75 kind of crosses diagonally there in the lower left part of your screen. The fire initiated or started in Northport, in the areas where the undeveloped lots are, and crossed the interstate, and then moved over a period of just a few hours, about 3.5 miles to the northeast until it essentially hit our reservoir. This patch you see up here that is an isolated patch actually happened the second day. That happened on the Sunday. And it's an indication to how the firefighters have to watch these fires. Once they burn through, it's not over. You've got to be diligent, and you've got to watch the conditions. Altogether, about over 2,000 acres burned, and most of that happened on Saturday, the 13th. This is a picture that Mr. Coates took on top of Reservoir Number 2. This is near the monument on the east side that many of you probably have seen in tours, looking to the west. You're looking across the reservoir, looking towards Northport, towards I-75. And what this shows is just the immense size of this fire as it was burning towards us. Here we can see the western side of Reservoir 2. This is the patrol road. You can see in this, you can see the flames have actually crossed that road. But of course, if they crossed I-75, they're going to cross a little 12-foot shell road quite easily. But you see some of the Forestry Service personnel there. In this photograph, you can see the helicopter dropping water to try to control the movement of the fire, and I'll show you shortly a video of that helicopter picking water up out of our reservoir. The very conveniently located source of water for their firefighting. Now this is some video footage that Mike Chell, our operations supervisor, made available to me. This is the security camera that we have mounted. This is a security camera we have mounted on our the discharge structure from Reservoir 2. This is where, as you drive up the ramp and you look to the south about 3/4 of a mile, you'll see that structure connected with a catwalk. So this is looking to the west. The camera just happened to be pointed in the right direction to capture this footage. And the way that it starts, I took 5 seconds at the beginning of every hour until the smoke was close, and then I took 5 seconds every 15 minutes. through the event. So you get a sense for the movement of the fire through the area. You can see just massive amounts of smoke obscuring the view. Now we transition to some handheld video. Doug Leith, our maintenance supervisor, who was here earlier, looks like maybe he has already gone back to work. But he took these images from the Crest Road on the western side of Reservoir Number 2. And there were times that the flames reached as high as 40 feet when the flames would hit a pocket of fuel that included just the right combination of low shrubs and trees. And wood ignites at a temperature of about 570 degrees Fahrenheit, but the temperature of a wildfire is about 3 times that much. But as that flame moves through there, it burns up all the combustible grasses first, the palm fronds first. It has to dehydrate stumps and larger, thicker pieces of wood. And so the flame will burn through there very, very quickly, but you'll see the smoldering and the smoking going on for quite some time after that. The flames got close to our chain link fence and passed right through it. Of course, being metal with a melting temperature far above that of the fire, it doesn't appear it damaged our fences. We did some research. It's possible it may have damaged the galvanizing on it. We did some research. There are a number of folks in Texas where they get a lot of range fires, and they've evaluated barbed wire fencing that has been subjected to multiple burns to determine whether or not it increases its brittle nature or does it rust more quickly. And their findings are that it doesn't really affect the quality of the wire. But I also found another place where a chain link fence manufacturer indicated if its fence went through a fire, it would void the warranty. So that seems to imply there could be an issue. And so we're going to watch that. Maybe there is a paint or a spray or something we can put on the fencing. The fire burned right up the embankment slope. It burned about 15 to 20 acres of the grass on the slope itself. I never did hear about how this fire was ignited. You know, the common ways that fires get ignited are a cigarette butt that someone doesn't police. Here is the helicopter reloading, and this is sped up by a factor of 600%. So don't think that the helicopter just whipped in there and filled up that quickly. He was very careful. But some of the ways that the forestry people say that fires can often start, that part of Northport is subject to a lot of dumping, a lot of landscaping debris. And oftentimes what will happen with trucks pulling trailers, if they don't secure their chains and the chains are left to dangle, they will issue a stream of sparks as they're dangling down the asphalt road. And so I thought that was intriguing. Never did hear about how this fire started, but certainly that sounds like that could potentially have been a factor. So as I said, that was the day after the fire came through, and you're going to see some pictures in a moment that will just astound you as to how this grass came back. But there may be some pockets in there where, because the rainy season is on us, we can't wait and we need to go ahead and put in some sod. And Mr. Stone is evaluating that from an embankment stability standpoint. This is a piezometer that was in the woods. It's a little scorched, but you know what? It works. It just keeps plugging right along. It's doing just fine.
Timex?
It would be a fantastic marketing opportunity for whoever makes this device. But one of the reasons it probably did so well was because this is an area that we maintain. We have to get access to it, so we keep it mowed and weed ate around. We keep it cut back. And so there wasn't an accumulation of fuel in this particular patch of ground. This is an example of a power pole that burned. This is not one of our poles. Hurricane Charlie had us put most of our poles below ground. Our electrical feeds are below ground now, where they're safe from fire. This was Florida Power and Light. We heard that up to 600 customers were temporarily without power as a result of the fire. But the fire crews did a fantastic job of controlling this fire. You have to let it burn, but you want to try to steer it away from critical infrastructure like the ranch house, our pump stations, our emergency backup generator, our well field, the diesel storage tank holding several thousand gallons of diesel fuel on the reservoir site. So the fire was on the 13th. Our barbecue, which many of you had the opportunity to come out and spend some time with us this afternoon, was on the 15th. And for those of you who had a chance to take the tour, you saw firsthand the burn damage from the fire. And we've had several inches of rain that fell over the next few weeks. And the photos I'm about to show you were taken on the 1st, so just 2.5 weeks later, and you have a before and after shot. And you can see the vibrant growth, the regrowth that happens after fire. And ecologists will tell you that in the wilderness, fire serves a very vital role in promoting healthy forests and restoring habitat. There are certain plant species, wildflowers that absolutely rely upon fire as part of their natural propagation process. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission identifies about a dozen different wildlife species that are absolutely dependent upon wildfire. Bobwhite quail, turkeys, scrub jays, red cockaded woodpeckers, gopher tortoises, indigo snakes, and fox squirrels all heavily benefit from routine wildfire. And for that reason, land managers mimic wildfire with controlled burns. We do controlled burns at the R.V. Griffin Reserve as well, but we typically do them in the winter season when the roots are dormant so that you cause less root damage from the fire. And also the cooler temperatures help to control any scorching damage that might happen. So significant change before and after here is quite significant. We're in the process of learning as well. We may have just learned that there is a value in burning your reservoir once in a while, as ironic as that sounds. Again, another fantastic picture of the before and after. Hard to believe, just 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. And this point, Mr. Coates told me the reason that the fire stopped in this line was because the helicopter laid down a bucket of water down the embankment. And that's all it took, stopped it. And so, quite effective. That's the end of my presentation, but I did want to recognize the Forest Service personnel. They have a cooperative sharing program where they share professional firefighters. We had folks from South Carolina working on the fire right there at our facility. They did a great job. The DeSoto County Fire Department, the Charlotte County Fire Department, all the emergency responders, the police folks that helped. We really express our appreciation, our thanks to those people. I also wanted to recognize all of our own dedicated folks who came in on the weekend and helped to coordinate access and to give us updates and ensure our facilities were well protected. And those included Sam Stone, Mr. Coates, Mr. Leith that you met earlier, Doug Leith, Donald Morton, and our operations supervisor, Mike Chell. And that's my update on this item.
Kevin, how often do we burn the R.V. Griffin Reserve?
Well, I don't know that there's a prescribed frequency, and we typically try to burn the pastures. We don't try to burn the wetlands. This time, the wetlands were dry, and the fire marched right across the wetlands. We typically try to burn the upland areas and the pastures on a frequency. What's recommended is every 3 to 4 years, and what that does is it helps to provide the benefit of fire, and it's frequently enough that it doesn't allow the fuels to accumulate. And that's the danger. Without fire, the fuels accumulate to the point where the fire, when it does happen, will burn so hot that it can be very damaging.
Okay. I just wondered if we had a standard program that we went by, we burned so much of it every year on a routine basis, or we burn it in quarters or thirds or whatever. Do we burn every year, or do we just burn one specific area every 3 or 4 years?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know the specific answer to that, and I don't know, Mr. Coates, if you know any more about it.
We do have a program that we burn every year out there. We don't burn the same area every year, but we try and burn the entire ranch about every 3 or 4 years. Okay. And that, of course, depends on conditions. If we have, really, really dry conditions, you just can't light the fire because it gets out of control.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Mr. Lehman?
Yeah, just wanted to make you aware, too, that we've learned and been contacted by some logging companies that with all the wildfires, evidently the logging companies will come through and do cleanup and make a profit on the fallen trees. So there is a logging company that's going to come in and have a discussion. If there's a dollar to be made, we'll certainly go and make that dollar and report back to you next board meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I had one additional fact to add. I forgot, but Mr. Lehman reminded me of it with his talk about the benefits. The land managers, there is a sizable herd of cattle that are on the R.V. Griffin Reserve, and certainly a wildfire puts cattle at risk. But the report to me was that although we burned a lot of fences up, that the march or the pace of the fire wasn't to the point where the cows couldn't get out of the way of it. And so no cattle were injured or died as a result of the fire. It's an interesting fact.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. General Counsel's report.
I have nothing new to add this meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Executive Director's report.
Just a couple things as far as the budget update. This board approved the tentative budget at the last board meeting. It's certainly circulated, posted on our website. We've had no comments as far as the budget itself, but as you see today about the pipeline and the modeling and the storage tank, we're continuously reviewing the future CIP, so that discussion will continue on. Also, by the way, if any of you want any info from the staff or presentation of your board, certainly feel free to ask. The Charlotte County staff, I know we've worked with them. They're preparing the item for their board book, but certainly contact us if you want any presentation or more information. Also within your board book are some letters to the state. These are statutory requirements of all special districts of the state. It regards rules review and certification. We as an authority, we do not make rules, but we have to respond to them that we do not make rules. So it's a standard response every year. It's not there for your approval. It's there for your knowledge and making sure you know. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Routine status reports. I think we're good with that. Board member comments. Anybody have any board member comments?
I just, Mr. Chairman, if I can. So, yeah, and I appreciate Mr. Lehman's comments about the rules. And you know, right, we don't promulgate rules, but we have a master water supply contract. That's how we address how the water is put out there. So, I mean, it's silly, but I guess it's required. One thing I wanted to make sure we continue to do, and if you just want to give us a quick update on where we stand with our Swift Mud permit for the 250 million gallons a day, because I spoke with Mr. Coates on pre-agenda, and it was encouraging, and I think we're moving ahead at a really good pace. May be prepared to do something, you know, have it in line in August, and then I think we just need, as a board, to continue very diligently moving the ball down the field. But
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mike Coates of your staff. We did meet with the Water Management District on, I think it was May 5th, early May. We talked to them about the board direction that we got in February on this, and we had a good discussion with them. We didn't get rejected on anything. We talked to them about 258 million gallons a day, a 50-year permit, taking that fixed quantity off the face of the permit. And told them that we expected to have something in their hands sometime later this summer. So anyway, that is our plan. The expectation is that we'll have a draft permit application finished sometime in early to mid-August, and then we would submit that permit application with your concurrence as soon as we could, because it usually takes, you know, we're looking at 4 to 6 months for a district action on this. So earliest Water Management District action probably is not going to be till January or February 2018 on the permit.
okay. Well, we will all appreciate your feedback and Mr. Lehman staying in touch with us, that if there's anything we need to do with regard to letter writing or phone calls or meetings, we're very happy to do that, because this is not just essential, this is critical to the future of the Peace River Minnesota Regional Water Supply Authority, period. This is what we must get accomplished in the next year. Top priority. So whatever it takes, we're going to help you guys out, but it's got to get done, because anybody steps ahead of us, it's going to affect the future of the entire region. So we need to be good stewards, and we need to get the job done. And I really appreciate, I mean, we only started talking about this, what, 4 months ago, 3 meetings ago, and we said, let's do this, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that you've taken it on and you are moving ahead with rapid pace. So I appreciate that. And my last comment, Mr. Chairman, is it has been a great honor and distinct privilege to work on this board. And I'm going to be handing the reins over to Commissioner Doherty for a period of time. He and I are going to share a responsibility, but we're going to throw the engineer in the mix a little bit so he can rattle the cage and get some good answers out of this group. But you know, I think I've really enjoyed the experience. I've really enjoyed working with the other member counties and Mr. Lehman. So I wish everybody great luck in the future, and I want to see that permit. I will be watching. So thank you very much.
Any other board members have any comments? Okay. Well, I do. Commissioner Constance, I've set up for a couple days trying to figure out something good to say, and man, I've drawn a blank.
See, now I expected that from you.
I'm teasing. I have to give you credit. Your head's as hard as mine. We've butted heads on some issues, and we have different views on things. But it was everything was always been professional, and when everything was said and done, whatever the board agreed upon was fine with both of us, and we walked out like professionals, still friends, and could eat together or talk together or whatever. And anyway, I just we're gonna miss you. Appreciate you. Your comments and your digging into things. There's not I don't believe we've had an agenda that you haven't noticed a period being in the wrong place or everything. So I know that you take time and you look through things very thoroughly, and we appreciate that. And at this time, we'd like to present you. I'm not going to do formal and get down there and all that, because then you might get teary-eyed or something on me. But
I appreciate that.
We're presenting you with the Golden Spigot Award, I guess, is what we call this. But anyway, we thank you for all that you do and appreciate it. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate the fact that I get to call you friend, because you're right. We have not always lined up the same way on certain issues, but at the end of the day, the gavel falls and we shake hands, and we talk about all kinds of fun stuff, mostly rodeo and things like that, or what's going on at Babcock. But you know, that's what this is all about. This is about being colleagues and working together and getting to the truth and getting to a good decision. So I've really appreciated working with you for 5 years. And Commissioner Benak, I've known you for at least 2 or 3 in the times we've been working with some of the political things with Manatee. Mr. Lewis, I don't know maybe. But you know, I really appreciate, you know, having the opportunity to work with all of you folks. You guys have great heads, and you're thinkers, and you know, you're helping to get this entire region to a better place, and we're doing it together. And the future in local politics is regionalization on all issues and all projects, because that's where you get funding. I mean, you know, Diane's nodding her head. She knows. Emily Lewis in the back knows. That's how we're going to get things done, is working together. So I've really appreciated working with this board. Thank you.
Enjoyed it also.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just say?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I've only been able to serve with you on this board for a short time, but I've served with you on the MPO, and certainly know that you are a very diligent public servant. You work so hard. You set an incredible standard. So thank you for your service, and yeah, you raise the bar for all of us. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much.
If there's nothing else, does the public have any comments? Okay. Seeing none, our next meeting will be Wednesday, August the 2nd, 9:30 a.m. in Sarasota for a public hearing for our fiscal year 2018 budget. And our future meetings will be October 4th in Manatee and December 6th in DeSoto. If there's nothing else to come before the board this time, we stand adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Hey, Sheriff, we have a question about why your office, your intelligence division, is investigating private citizens for criminal investigation that happen to be activists that are overseeing your department. Why would you have your intelligence division investigate private citizens? We have done...
For life hating so much.
Sir, we don't hate anyone. We love freedom and we love American people. And government is out of control. That's why you're seeing such a revolt nationwide. Why can't you just answer, why is Susan Edwards, your intelligence division, investigating private citizens? This should not happen.
Are you here to apply for a job?
Possibly I might be applying for a job, but that's irrelevant to my question. Why would you ask that question?
Well, enjoy the fair.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Excuse you?
Excuse me, sir.
So those of you that haven't
Wow.
been on a bike before, we're
Sheriff's
just
getting a little too pushy.
is
You
the
work
hard
for
part.
us, Sheriff.
In
Just
keeping
keep that in mind. At one time, we respected you, but not with that type of attitude.